Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me. Give me a hashtag replay if you're on with the replay, and let me know that you were able to watch the video. And as always, feel free to comment and leave me some questions. If this is your first time joining me, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Evelyn Knight. I am the host of the Childcare Business Coach podcast. I am the owner and the CEO of Childcare Business Professionals, which is a company that helps childcare owners and directors find success while maintaining high quality, research-based standards. I help you just learn how to balance it and still be able to turn a profit in your childcare center. And yes, it is possible. I know it's hard to believe, but it is possible. I'm also a childcare center owner myself. I have done everything in the childcare center. I've been a director, I've been the cook, I've been infant toddler director. So I've got a lot of experience and knowledge, over 20 years of experience in centers. I currently own a center. I'm looking to buy another one. I've started pretty much every type. I've done an in-home. I've been an in-home provider. I've built a center from the ground up. I've taken over an existing center. I've reopened a center, and I'm looking actually to purchase another one here pretty soon. I'm expanding. I've done a lot in this industry. So part of my mission is to help owners and directors really just overcome the struggles that I've been through. I've been there, done that. If I can help you avoid some of the pain points that I've actually gone through, that would just be wonderful. I have gone through a lot as an owner, and my mission now is just to help other owners not to experience what I've been through. I've faced bankruptcy, and so if I can save one person from facing bankruptcy, then my mission is complete. So thank you so much for joining me. Let me know you're here. I see Deidre and Kristen are here. Hello. Just say hello in the comments. I love the interaction. It does get lonely on the side of the camera. So just let me know you're there and ask some questions. You will get the most out of this as you ask questions. Once again, my comments don't always work. So I am going to access the page to make sure that I am seeing any of your guys' questions. So I can make sure to interact and ask anything. So I do apologize. Usually they should be appearing on my screen, but lately that has not been the case. So it just has not been working. So I will keep track for you guys. So today I just want to go over once again what we're talking about and what the pillars that we're looking at in this series. So we're talking about just increasing enrollment in your childcare center and how you can do that. How can you really just focus on increasing enrollment in your center? And there's the foundational pieces that we've been talking about this week. On Monday, we talked about just your vision. Your vision is always going to be the groundwork for everything you do. Everything you do is going to revolve around your vision. I talked to you guys a little bit about how when all of this started this year, 2020 has been an extraordinary year for my family. My husband has end-stage kidney disease. He is on dialysis 7 days a week, and it's been a rough year. So he had 3 strokes in the beginning of the year. So when COVID hit, my family was already going through a lot. It was going through quite a bit. And sometimes I just had to wonder, like, how am I going to keep going? What am I going to do? And it really came down to vision. It was really just my vision that got me up in the morning, and it's the mission that you have in your life. Your vision is basically that end goal, right? The way I look at it to myself is when I'm 80 years old and I'm looking back on my life, what legacy do I want to leave, right? What do I want to look back on my life and be proud of doing? And that is my vision for my life. That's pretty much what it is. So we talked a little bit about that. Again, I do have podcast episodes about it. I have other videos I've created. There's a lot of creating a vision can be pretty difficult. So I have created resources for you guys. If you're one of my members, I have a whole unit on creating vision. And I'm sure if you're one of my members, it's one of the first things I have you do. But if you're struggling with that, and if we haven't done that yet, just go through the unit on vision. And you guys will see. I have lots of materials on that and guided packets that I've made that help you create your vision. Um, so I think in January we're going to work a little bit, do some more vision work for sure, because it is just the absolute foundation to everything. So yesterday we talked about your online and your phone presence and how you need to make sure you're found first. How do our customers find us in today's day and age? Why is it so important to be found first? And why do we need to look really professional, right? Why do we have to have that good foot forward before anybody else? Today we're going to talk about your professional persona, and I will explain what that means. I'm not going to go into it right now. And then tomorrow we will be talking about always being tour ready. And we will also discuss alternative ways of doing tours in the land of COVID. And since we can't do our traditional, I am going to talk about your traditional tour because this isn't going to last forever. We will be doing traditional tours. It's something we really need to focus on. But I'm also going to focus on, okay, some adaptations that you can make in order to accommodate COVID. So we will be going over that tomorrow. And then Friday, which is probably the most important day for these sessions, we are going to be talking about the tour, follow-up. Follow-up is so very important. And I will give you guys some statistics on Friday on why follow-up is so important. But currently, only 3% of centers actually do any kind of follow-up. 3%. So it can be the game changer. It can be an absolute game changer if you have a good follow-up system in place. So we will be talking about that on Friday. But today, we'll get right into it. Today's probably the quickest session talking about professional persona. And I will explain to you, professional persona is basically, it's like your brand, okay? It's really what image are you going to put into the world. So it's like your branding, it's your culture, it's all of that. It's just, how do you look? But what I'm really focusing on is just making sure that you are looking professional at all times, right? So one of the things I want you to think about is, imagine there's a couple moms and they're on a play date, and one of them just mentions, I need to find childcare for my son, let's say. The other mom is familiar with your program. What do you want the mom that's familiar with your program to say about your center? Okay, what reputation do you want to have? How do you want that conversation to go? That is your brand. That is the brand, right? That is where you want to make sure you have a professional persona. I'll tell you the story about when I bought my current childcare center. I owned another center in town, and that I had built from the ground up. But I had actually used a friend of the family's, and we didn't have a huge budget when I built this center. And so this other center came up on the market about 18 months later. And it was a amazing 1.5 million, and this is 12 years ago. Okay, so $1.5 million building, beautiful, everything state of the art, gorgeous, big building with an amazing playground. It has 2 playgrounds, double the size of my center. Okay, so when it first opened, as you can imagine, I was pretty intimidated because I had gone very conservative when I built my center. I had just kind of taken the cheap way out of everything, just really conserving money. I didn't have, to be honest with you, back then when I built the first center, I didn't have enough money. I should not have done it. I was way in over my head. So the second center came up on the market, or was opening, and it was literally, my husband used to call it the Taj Mahal of centers because it was this gorgeous big building and nothing in my town was like it. It's huge. It was double my capacity. And so long story short though, 18 months later, I'm buying that center. And the owner was going bankrupt, and I'm coming in and just basically taking it over. I literally shut down my original center and combined the two. That's actually how low they were in children. I was able to take all the children from my center, combine it with this one just to fill it. And I was at capacity at my other center, and to fill this center. So at the time though, in our little town, there were the 2 centers. There was my center, and then the competition that I'm buying. Okay, so I got a phone call from our local pool, and both of us had been doing field trips to the pool. And this person I did not even know, never met her in my life, just called me and called my center and just asked to talk to the owner. And when I talked to her, she said, you know, I heard that you're buying Zoo and Around. And I just want you to know that you're going to really have some work ahead of you. She's like, you know, as the person who runs this pool, I just have to tell you that when your staff comes in and your school comes in, your staff is very attentive. They watch the children. They do a wonderful job. She said when the staff from the other center come in, all they do is read magazines and get a tan. She's like, the difference between your guys' she said the difference between your guys' center is like night and day, and you're going to have a lot of work to do. So I asked the lady, oh, do you have children or anything? She said, nope, I'm grandma, don't have kids. She's like, I just see the difference in the character of your employees versus that center employees. So I know just by seeing the difference in how your employees behave versus theirs that you're going to have an uphill battle and a lot of work to do to get that center in shape. So that's exactly what I want you guys to think about when it comes to professional persona. Before I bought Zooin, the reputation that it had gained in our community was pretty negative because they didn't have a professional persona. They were putting out this persona of sloppiness, of just, it was unprofessional. It was very unprofessional. The girls were going to the pool and literally laying and centering magazines instead of watching the children, right? So that was the image that is being spread around town now about the center. So now people in our community were seeing it as just a daycare that just doesn't care. They're just, you know, it's like that. They were gaining that reputation that can give our industry a bad name a lot of times. So that's when I kind of knew I had my work cut out for me. And I decided one day to drop in unannounced in the evening, 30 minutes before close. So I knew the owner wasn't going to be there before. So this was before the sale had closed, to see what I see. There was no management on duty, which is okay. But what I walked into, I walked in and all the children were on the same playground, which is okay too. I mean, it wasn't that big a deal. But there were about 4 teachers laying in the grass together in a circle, all 4 of them laying in a circle facing each other, laughing and reading magazines. That's literally, and this was about 12 years ago. And that's literally what they were doing. Nobody was watching the children. They were just laying around, laughing, reading magazines. And I just kept thinking to myself, wow, this is what parents are picking up their children to. This is what a tour would see, right? So it is so unprofessional. The owner had no idea this was happening. The director probably knew. She definitely didn't have control over her staff. So that is the image that this center was putting out there. And I knew in that moment, I was literally like 2 weeks away from closing on this center. I was closing this business deal. That I was going to have to come in now and change the whole town's perspective on Zoo and Around, right? So that's really where, guys, think about it. Your professional persona may not be as far, you may not be as far away from it as I was at that point, right? But there are subtle little nuances too that you really have to look at that are going to drive your reputation within your community. You want to make sure that you are controlling it. Part of the reason that the owner I bought my center from was going bankrupt is because she didn't have that professional persona. She didn't intentionally make sure she created that culture within her center, right? She didn't have vision. She didn't have a culture. She didn't have a brand. She just let that go on her own. And this is something that's very difficult for a director to do. The center belongs to the owners, whether you're a corporation, and corporations are wonderful about branding and creating their brand, they're creating their brand and having that professional persona. They're wonderful at it. Owners, not so much all the time, but we have to be diligent and do this. This is not something we can rely on our directors to do, because when you own a center, it is yours. It is yours. It's not the directors. So you need to have that vision. You need to have the care, and you need to make sure that your policies and procedures reflect the image you want everybody to see in your center. It's very, very important. So I really want you to think about, like, what would, again, going back to that first example, what would those two moms talk about if they were talking about your center? What kind of reputation does your center have? What kind of reputation do you want them to have? Okay, so if you could control that conversation, what would you want those moms to say? Now think about, how would you get there? How would you accomplish getting that image you want for your center? Okay, so that is something very important to think about. How would you obtain the image that you want? Pretty important part of that. One of the things I'd like for you guys to think about also is, I want you to think about different brands. When you think of the Disney brand, if you've ever been to Disneyland versus Six Flags, so incredibly different, such incredibly different experiences, right? The last time I was at Six Flags, I just was shocked. I'm a Disney fanatic. My family would go 2 or 3 times a year to Disneyland. We always got annual passes, so I'm very, very familiar with Disneyland. We got annual we live very close to Six Flags, so we did go to get annual passes to Six Flags too. But I had come to the point where one day my oldest son, when he was about 10, told me that one trip to Disneyland is worth 10 trips to Six Flags. And so after that, I was like, you know what, you're right. Let's just do that. And so I was very familiar with going to Disneyland and their quality of service. But one day we said, let's go to Six Flags. It was Halloween or something. And I just was floored at how dirty it was, how the customer service was awful. And it's not so much that it was awful as it was mediocre. But when you're used to Disney's customer service and Disney standards, it made Six Flags look terrible. It makes it feel awful because Disney is at such a high standard, right? Think of Starbucks is another one. When I tell you Starbucks, you guys all have this image that goes in your head, right? They just are clean. They have good coffee that's just like high top quality. You know exactly the image and the brand that they have produced. They were very intentional about that. Now think about McDonald's, okay? If you compare Starbucks to McDonald's, right? McDonald's, from what I don't drink coffee, but from what I understand, they have some pretty good quality coffee. They, they serve a lot of the same types of drinks, right? The cafe stuff, and that you could get at Starbucks. Some of the things, I know not nearly as big of a menu, but you get a coffee, just a plain coffee at McDonald's versus Starbucks. You're going to be paying at least 3 times the amount at Starbucks. Yet everybody still goes to Starbucks, right? And it's because of that brand that they have chosen to put out into the world. It's the experience we're paying for. For me, when I go to Disney, I am paying for the Disney experience. If you really strip away all the frills, right, between Disneyland and Six Flags, and we just look at the bear ride, the rides at Disneyland really aren't that exciting if you just looked at the bear rides. It's the experience around the rides that make them so amazing. It's the showmanship, right? If you take Space Mountain, for example, and take it out and just the roller coaster part, there's actually some YouTube videos that'll show you what it's like without all the cool stuff in Space Mountain. Or like Big Thunder Mountain, right? There are actually some pretty boring roller coasters. But Six Flags has some amazingly just scary roller coasters, right? It's the showmanship that Disney puts on. Same thing with the Disney movies. Think about it. Like, they just don't compare. You think of Moana and Frozen. The quality and the showmanship behind the intentionality behind what Disney puts out into the world is always top level, right? It's just up there. But it's the same thing with Starbucks versus McDonald's. McDonald's basically has created a system where they have dumbed down their system of like how they serve customers. Like, if you realize, ever look at when you go to McDonald's, look at the where the employees taking menu orders. There's actually pictures on the screen of each food item. They don't even have to read. They don't even have to be able to read in order to pick what you're getting. So think of the difference in experience when it comes to customer service, right? When you go to McDonald's versus Starbucks. If they're hiring employees that don't even need to be able to read at a much lower, pay scale versus, and their benefits are not, they're pretty much, they're not great at all, right? They don't really have a lot to offer. But then you go to Starbucks where they have higher standards. What they demand is a little bit more. Your experience is going to be so much better, right? So much greater. And let me just qualify. I don't mean that you have to pay your staff a fortune, you guys. I know most of us cannot. Most childcare centers pay minimum wage. You can still bring your staff up to that level that you want. That is all up to you in being a coach and a mentor to your staff. The wages do not matter. Okay, if you've listened to me enough, I've talked about it all the time, where according to studies done on Fortune 500 companies, most employees are not looking mainly for wages when it comes to a job. That is not even in the top 4 of their biggest priorities. They want to make a difference in the world, which is your vision. That is your vision. That is the most important thing to an employee. And then also how they're treated, right? And how they're appreciated. Those are the 2 top things you want to focus on. So when you're creating this professional persona, it doesn't mean that you have to pay the top dollar people. You just have to train your staff to be the top dollar person. You have to make them see themselves as professional. In this industry, we complain so much about not being seen as professional, but we often don't act like it. And I can tell you, my center is absolutely treated like it's a professional center. My employees, my staff, we are absolutely treated like we're professionals. And that's because we've been very intentional about creating that professional persona for us. So if that's something that you really don't like about your center, look around your center. How do your employees dress? How do they talk to the parents? How do they present themselves in the world, right? Another thing I want you to really think about professional persona. I'm not a big fan of like t-shirt uniforms. If you do, there's nothing wrong with it. I prefer aprons, and the reason I prefer things that come on and off is again, when my center that I own now was my competition, it was pretty new, and I had gone, and I live in Nevada, so we have casinos, and our casinos have the best restaurants. So we were going to dinner in a casino one night. And I looked over, and sitting at a slot machine with a drink and smoking a cigarette was this lady wearing a Zoonera t-shirt. And it said staff on it. So I knew, oh, that lady works at Zoonera. And I just heard some other people talking about, oh, wow, look at that lady. She works with kids. Oh, my God, look at her. And it just kind of dawned on me like, oh, this woman is being judged because she's sitting at a slot machine with a drink and a cigarette. I mean, this is Nevada. That is totally normal everywhere you go. You can't go to a grocery store without having slot machines. So it really dawned on me that, like, wow, they're judging her for that. And now they're associating it with the company, right? About a week later, I went to Walmart, and there was another staff member in a Zoonera t-shirt with the staff across her chest getting into an argument with somebody who apparently cut her in line, right? So here she is screaming at this woman representing the company out in public. So it dawned on me again that, wow, twice now I've seen this negative representation of the company because people were wearing their logo wear with the staff across it, right? And I have to say, this lady might have been totally in the right to, I don't know what happened, why she was yelling, right? That woman who was sitting at a slot machine by the restaurant wasn't really doing anything wrong. It's that perception. And it's the perception that we really need to try and control. We can't control it all, absolutely cannot, but you can control what you can, right? Which is why I am not a big fan. I don't want my staff going after hours representing the company if they're not going to always be conscious of how they're representing the company. If you're going to be wearing my logo, you better be on your best behavior, right? So we can't ask employees, though, to do certain things when they're off the clock, right? We can't ask them to be a certain way. We can't ask them not to go to certain places. But we can control if they're wearing your logo and doing it. And if they do, that's okay. I would just make sure that you train them to respect the logo. Really train them to see your center as a place that they want to lift up and not drag down, as a place that they want to bring light to, right? So just really, I think that's what is important for us to really focus on is how do we want to be perceived, and teach them that. Really focus on teaching your staff about perception and why it is so important to have that just that positive perception reflected on your center all the time. A lot of times people just aren't aware of this. It's not something they think about. They just don't think about it. They don't think about like, oh, you're right, I am wearing the logo and that might just look negative. And even though I really didn't do anything wrong, it's how people see the world. It's called propriety. And it is an unfortunate thing. People out there are very judgmental, and it's something we have to be conscious of, right? We've got to make sure that we're always maintaining that great reputation for our centers. So just, I know, I don't know, it's one of the things that kind of does bother me that we do have to always be on the lookout for that. As an owner myself, I can tell you, I do not go in public. I live in a small town. I will not go out in the community unless I look somewhat decent. Like, I would definitely not go out in here in our area, going like pajama bottoms to Walmart is a normal thing. I would never do that. I usually look like this when I go out in public because I'm the owner representing this company, and I never know who I'm going to run into, so I'm not going to wear sweats. I'm not going to wear t-shirts unless I'm at the gym, because I am always representing my company. I am the face of my company, so I'm always going to make sure I look professional and like I have it together, and that I don't want anyone to look at me like, oh wow, she's a wreck, right? Because then they're going to associate my business with being a wreck. If I'm a wreck, Zuin's a wreck. So I have to always be conscious of how I am representing myself, right? Especially as the owner. I have to be really conscious. Sometimes I'll go to the neighboring town to go grocery shopping because of this. I just always know that how I look, how I'm perceived is reflecting into my center. And I know it sucks, but it is the reality of how people think. People are very judgmental, and gossip gets around fast. When I was an owner really early on, I was pretty young. I remember I was shopping for my husband's birthday, and I had bought a bottle of tequila. I buy like one bottle of tequila a year, literally. And the next day I went into work, and I just hear, like, I went into my center and I hear, oh, I hear that you were buying tequila yesterday. Oh my gosh. It's so, like, wow. It was just a reality, like, wow, that's gonna now, what am I gonna be labeled as? What is this and that? So it's just something to be really conscious of. And it is one of my least favorite parts, but we have to think about it. We have to think of that perception, because if you want people talking about your center, one of the biggest ways to get enrollment is word of mouth. One of the best ways are referrals and word of mouth. And you want to make sure that word of mouth is always positive. If somebody is touring your center, thinking about going to your center, and then they're being told these stories about your center, you have a problem. You're probably not going to enroll those kids, right? So that's why you need to be intentional about creating the narrative that goes around about your center. So important for us to create that narrative, right? To control it, so that you know that when people are looking for a center and they start asking around and they start having these conversations, that it's going to be a positive experience. Make it difficult for them to find that negativity. That's pretty much what putting on your professional persona means. Just make it difficult and make yourself professional. What you really want to think about too within the center and just throughout everything is, what is the look that you're really going to, right? What is the tone that you want to have put out there? If you walk into your center and it's just a bunch of kids screaming and crying, it's chaos, the teachers gossip with parents, that is not setting a good tone, right? That is not going to be a comfortable place that feels welcoming and inviting. How is it going to feel? How do you think your staff feels half the time if that's the kind of environment it is? So those are the things you really wanted to keep, just grab a hold of and take control. Is what tone do you want for your own center? How do you want it? And again, like I was saying Monday, I want you to really just fantasize and think in terms of, how do you want it to smell? How do you want it to look? How do you want it to feel, right? As many sensories as you can get in there. Just that is what you want to focus on, is making sure it looks and is the way you want it to be. That way you are controlling that narrative. Let's see. You also want to be consistent. Make sure that you're always giving out the same materials, that they are clean and they look good. One of my biggest pet peeves my staff knows is never to ditto or like photocopy a sheet that has already been photocopied, because it gets sloppy. If I'm giving you my tour information, my tour packet, it has got to be clean and pristine, right? You're going to take this information home and you're going to have other centers' information too. I need to make sure that mine looks the best. I need to make sure that it's always clean looking, that it doesn't look worn out, it doesn't look like you just threw it together and didn't care. It's got, you just remember, you're not the only center they're probably touring. So if they're taking materials home, how do your materials look? Are they presentable? Are they thorough? Are they clean? What are you giving your parents? How is it presented to them, right? I think it's really important, making sure the presentation is really good, because when push comes to shove, after the tour, after everything's done, what they're going to have is the materials that you gave them. And how well you did it is really going to tell them if this is a professional person that I'm dealing with, or organization, or if it's not. If you're sloppy, then your center's probably sloppy too. So that's something just to keep in mind, is what kind of paperwork are you giving them and how does it look? It's got to be clean, it's got to be concise, and it's got to look good. It has to look good, because when they walk away and they're having that discussion, you know, the family discussion over which center, and that is what they're looking at. And just remember too, every encounter that you make counts. You just never know who's going to have a child, who is going to be a future customer, or who's really just going to complain about you and spread stuff on social media. One of the things I did when I first opened my childcare center that was very effective, before I had gained a reputation or anything like that, was every young child I saw out in public, I would make sure to engage with that child and compliment them. That was always engaged and found something to compliment, which there's always something to compliment about a child, so it was pretty easy. But whether they looked like they were grandparents, whether they looked like they were their own parents, I always complimented the child, right? And I would get into conversation with the parent, and then I would hand them my business card and just say, oh, by the way, I own the local childcare center. Here's my card. Give me a call if you need anything. So what you're doing, and what I was doing in that case, is I was building rapport. I broke the ice by giving that compliment, and make sure it's sincere. It's got to be a sincere compliment. And that broke the ice. That takes the guard down of the guardian who's there with the child. It just makes them at ease with me, takes their guard down. And then by just offering the card, I'm like, hey, now they feel like, oh, wow, I know the owner of the center now. So cool, right? If I need something. It's the way I filled 2 separate centers that I opened, was that personal touch. And I always made sure I was very professional, polite, and I really put that best foot forward, right? It's really how I just, the last 2 centers I've purchased and owned, that is how I fill them. Amongst like social media, advertising, different things like that. When I say advertising, I really haven't paid for a whole lot of advertising. Just posting on social media pages, locals pages, engaging with parents, talking to them, helping them come from a place of service. That's what I'm always looking at. Is I'm coming from a place where how can I help these people that I want as my customer? How can I serve you? I'm going to serve you first, and then we can have a business relationship, right? Just like what I'm doing here. I'm giving you guys this free week seminar for free on how to increase enrollment, right? And my hope and my goal is to have some of you become my clients, right? So if I come from a place of let me serve you first, I'm going to give to you unconditionally. I don't care if I make anything off of it. I know in the long run, this customers will come as long as I keep coming from a place of service. And it same thing really does happen in a child care center. When you encounter these people, lifting up their day, telling them their child is beautiful, giving them a compliment on, wow, you're handling your child beautifully. I really love to see how well you handled that situation and how well your child has behaved, whatever, right? Giving them that, since you're breaking down those walls, you're building trust and rapport, and you're really just helping them in a way just to ease their anxiety. And I call it making my 5-minute friend, right? And you're just helping them to just feel at ease with you, and helping them to just feel comfortable with reaching out if they need to. One of the big things too is grandparents. So many grandparents that are babysitting their kids, or their grandkids, they really want to break. So when you approach them, you plant that seed in their head. And that seed is like, oh wow, what if I took them here for a couple days a week? And they could get preschool in, and so now they're getting educated. I get some time to myself. And the grandparents enroll all the time, because they want that peace, they want that time, and a childcare center is a way for them to accomplish that. So something I had really good luck with is those childcare, grandparents. So that is, let me just make sure that last thing that I have on my notes is talking about fear and objection. Again, with the last example I gave you, can really help parents to feel at ease with you, right? Because you broke that ice. But they're still going to have fears. So you should be allowing them to do 80% of the talking, and you should be doing about 20%. And you want to listen to things. What are they afraid of? What fears do they have? Do they have this like archaic view of what daycare is? And because of how people used to perceive it, they have this bad view of it. Really listen and be ready to counter their objections, right? Just be ready. Just think of all, and what I encourage you to do is the next few tours or people you talk to about enrolling in your center, write down their objections. Okay, keep a log of what their objections are. Why don't they want to open your childcare center, or why do they want to, what are they afraid of, right? That's what I really want you to think of, is what are they afraid of? But you've got to let them do the talking if you're going to find out what it is they're afraid of. And then address it. And then just hit it head on. Oh yes, my staff, they're all fingerprinted, and they all have FBI background checks done, and they are CPR certified. So that, I hope, was helpful for you guys. Again, send me any questions you have. Give me questions in the comments. Join me tomorrow when we talk about the tour. I'll go into detail about the tour, some ways that you can do the tour online now. I'd be happy to chat with you guys online, just if you message me. And please give me comments, questions. I'm more than happy to answer. I hope everybody has a great rest of their evening. Bye.